I am live. So let's make sure that this is good. I am live. So let's make sure that this is good.
Fucking wild out. You get that shit, man?
Okay, this seems pretty good. All right, so the stream's running. We'll start in about a minute.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me.
We'll start in a minute. Hold on. Let me get chat here. Perfect. So I'll leave this here just in case anyone asks anything. I know there's about a 10 to 15 second delay. I did that on purpose. Just to make sure that everything goes smoothly. I don't have to worry about anything of the sort, I guess.
Take it away, baby.
All right, 8:30. All right, guys. So this is the very first of hopefully many Latino thoughts. So a bit of a background on the name. So us three here, Aaron, Abraham, me, we're all of Hispanic descent, of Latino Americans, and we just thought it would be cool to just kind of express that a little bit. Now, even though we are of Latino heritage, this is not a Latino limited podcast. Like, if this goes well, we really hope to have more people come over and just start talking about important issues, or not necessarily controversial, but just stuff that isn't really covered in modern news, or things that people that do cover it in modern news. But it's all I feel like a lot of the ambient out there is very negative. Like, there's too much. Like, there's a lot of problems out there, but I don't hear a lot of solutions, and that's what we're trying to get at here. So hopefully we can get to some of that. So if you guys would want to introduce yourself, Aaron, anything you want to say? Anything you want?
I'm Aaron. I'm a secular conservative. I've been every spectrum when it comes to perceived political affiliation, but I've always had my roots in secular conservatism. I don't really have any, I guess, inherent biases against anything. I just like hearing people's ideas. You're up, Butters?
Yeah, I kind of want to give a little more insight into who I am. Not to curve you or anything, but let's see. I'm 21, just like demographics. I'm 21. I think I consider myself liberal enough to call myself liberal and vote liberal. Yeah, my parents immigrated from Mexico. Spanish was my first language, and I picked up English pretty quickly.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm a third year student at Princeton studying public policy and international affairs. I'm also getting certificates in entrepreneurship and French because it interests me. So I'm always happy to talk about venture capitalism, let's see, nonprofits, consulting. Yeah, I kind of have my foot in so many different. My interests lie a bunch
That's awesome.
everywhere. Yeah,
Man.
so that wasn't very articulate, but
So we
yeah, that's
have
a little bit.
So a little interesting observation here. We have a liberal that likes venture capital. That's rare. So a liberal that is really into venture capitalism. Usually a lot of at least the modern liberals. I don't consider yourself like a modern, postmodern liberal, because a lot of them hate capitalism, but you are all about that, and that's really awesome. So now an introduction about myself. So my name is Jorge Garza. I am a graduate of Texas A&M, class of 2018, and I consider myself a conservative. Not I consider more of myself a libertarian, right libertarian. I believe in entrepreneurship. I love all of that. I believe in capitalism and the private enterprise and the private market, private sector. But I do believe that the government does have its place, although not in much. I do believe that less government is better, but that's just my thoughts. Okay, so to kick things off, again, we're going to start off with the topic of Latinx. So I personally think that Latinx is, if you get, for those of you that don't know, is a term that was derived in the early 2000s to sort of give it Latinos or Latinas a gender neutral or a non-binary description, which so I would like to give my opinion on this. So I actually take the Neil deGrasse Tyson approach to this. The thing that I don't like about the word Latinx is that Latino, Latina, like that term was invented in like the 1860s. Not invented, but it was like made, right? Because the term Hispanic comes from the word Hispaniola, which is from Europe, which is like España, which is where a lot of like Latin American countries, like Central America, South America, people come from. And it's like you use this word Latino to describe Latin Americans, right? And then all of a sudden you change it. Like Neil deGrasse Tyson is technically an atheist, right? But he respects Christian traditions when it comes to aerospace. Like when he writes a thesis, he uses AD and BC. And when he talks about like a calendar or like the summer solstice, he like acknowledges that the Catholic Church is like the one that invented the Gregorian calendar and talked about like the modern seasons because the science is good, right? So to me, it's more like a tradition, right? Like the word Latino, Latina was made for a reason to identify male, female, right? But now in today's mega progressive world, it's like nothing, like gender is like not real, and I don't believe in that. So those are my 2 cents on that.
So when it comes to something like Latinx, I think it stems from a good place. I don't think it's intrusive as it appears at face value. Do I think that it affects Latin American culture? Because a lot of Latin American language is based on how you pronounce certain words, as in o or a, to describe male or female. And one of the problems is it's almost like you're saying that the culture itself is wrong, and it's and in essence it's kind of hypocritical because a lot of excuse me for not being, maybe I don't know people that particularly use the word often and why they use it, but the way I interpret it is it's calling a portion of the culture toxic just because it describes gender, and it's coming from a group of people that demands respect of all cultures, and I see that as almost hypocritical. But I do think it comes from a good place because there are facets of culture that need to change and need to grow.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't necessarily agree that that's a change that needs to happen or that needs to be seen.
Yeah. Abraham?
I think, yeah, this is an interesting topic because I was just introduced to Latinx, that term, when I got to school. Where I'm from here in South Texas, it's not really used, which is South Texas, just to give you a place where we're from. Mission, Texas is kind of like, think a microcosm of like 80% of the Mexican American, Hispanic, what have you, demographic. So since it's only us, like since we're the majority of the population living here, we see ourselves from the perspective of our own lens, of our own culture. So it may not seem, and I think we have a pretty traditional Latinoamericano culture here in South Texas. Like, it's very traditional. It's becoming a little more progressive as I guess as time moves on. And because it's so traditional, I think we're used to a lens from which we don't need Latinx. We don't need the X because like it doesn't apply to us, or we don't know people who identify non-binary in the non-binary lens. But I think including Latinx is a consideration for that demographic that may feel underrepresented or not represented at all, stuck into these two binaries, because like it is like Spanish is a gendered language. Everyone can like admit that. It's just like that's the truth. As Aaron said, it's O and A at the end of each word. We have la or It's a gendered language. But because we're in more progressive times, people feel that it's in order to fully represent like their identity, they Latinx is a little more respectful because you don't want to assume anyone's gender. Um, so I think it's a good compromise. Um, I identify and I always will identify as Latino. I don't think I'll ever use Latinx to like for myself, but I do think it's important to underscore the fact that some people don't have the same comfort that I have in Latino. Uh, and I think I know I'm going on a tangent, but it's a very I'm being very careful with my words because I don't want to confuse anything or
Yeah.
I don't want to sound overly PC or
Yeah.
not PC. I hope I make it clear that I think the X is there for a purpose because some people don't feel like they're represented. And if that X is gonna make them feel more represented, then like we'll give it to them. I think as a culture, and I don't think it's anything wrong with a culture. I think Aaron, I wanted to touch on the comment you made about it being like the culture. There's something being wrong with the culture. I don't think there's anything wrong with the culture, and it's not the culture's fault. But it's like the existing society, the society in which we currently exist in.
So
That
so that's interesting. So what gives people who and for um for a comparison, people that live like in a life of privilege, the right to change a culture of a society that is oft has often been like at the backbone of industry in America. Like, what gives people the right to change that?
are we assuming that if this is what you're getting at, that white people and people of privilege give are the people that are perpetuating the Latinx.
Yeah, what gives their privilege the right? Like, isn't that kind of hypocritical? They're saying that it's
Who's they though? Who's they? I want to make sure we're clear. Who's they?
to say that because I feel this way, I'm gonna change your culture. It's like they're obsessed with the grandiosity of their victimization.
Wait, hold on. But are you saying the privileged people are the ones that are pushing this? Is that what you're saying? Like
I'm
who's
saying
like are you saying like yeah? Because like what I want to understand is the question, right?
this are from what countries?
The
Can you
what?
repeat that?
The what?
The people that are pushing this are from what countries?
Well, does it matter? It's in the U.S. or well, that's the thing. Like, actually, I actually don't know. I don't know. I know it I know that I researched that it was started somewhere in the early 2000s, but I am not sure where, like, who started the Latinx movement or who's the one that like coined the phrase or is trying to.
So who do you predominantly see pushing Latinx?
People who are uncomfortable and don't feel represented enough with the word Latino. I think.
So
Okay,
I guess the question becomes now.
but
Like,
what gives them the right to change it?
No, no, but before we talk about, agency, I think it's important we establish who even is the person that started Latinx. I don't think we have a clear, like, I don't think any of us three are answering that.
well,
I think it'd be interesting
I
to
don't
check
know if
that.
the who's too important. I think that what matters more is like again, the whole push for making like using Latinx, like let's say in books, right? Like let's say in books, the reason that they're pushing for Latinx is because again, you know like you said, the progressive movement is saying that you can't just gender someone by looking at them. That's if you are a progressive, right? But I don't think we've reached the point where it's like, oh, I'm gonna go ahead and kind of like with the transgender movement that they're saying, oh, like with the whole pronouns thing, where it's like, oh, what's it's like, how do you identify? Like I don't think the culture has reached the point where instead of saying hello, we'll say hi. What do you identify as? What is your pronouns? And if you happen to, I don't know if you'll get to the point where you'll ask for the race, right? If people will say Latinx, right? Because usually, a normal conversation will go somewhere of the sort like, oh, hello, my name is so and so, and then they'll ask you questions like, oh, you look, I don't know, this might sound kind of racist, but oh, you look kind of tan, like what's your background? It's like, oh, I'm Latino, right? I doubt someone will ask something like that like today. You'd probably get like menched nowadays.
I
What's
mean,
it?
is it that should be respected in the first place? Should at you at face value respect somebody who says I deserve to be called Latinx? Like, is that somebody that you see as a stable person, or
If they're
I definitely.
if they're demand, so it depends. Like if they're demanding it, well then if they don't feel comfortable with the terms Latino and Latina and they want to be called Latinx, I feel like that's a conversation I'm willing to have with someone, right? It's like, oh, can you please, like when you refer to my race, can you say Latinx? It's like, well, sure. Like I feel like I'd be very comfortable with saying that, right?
But it's not when you refer to my race. It's when you refer to me. I think it's on an individual level. I think everyone's free to, if you have mutual respect between two people, and you want to be identified as Latinx, then I think it's fair, very fair. But not for your whole race, because
Oh,
that
that
doesn't make sense.
yeah, yeah. I'm not saying about the whole race, but like again, let's say that you identified as Latinx, right? Like if I came up to you as like, but then that's the thing. Am I do you want me to refer to you as like hey Latinx or is like or hey or hi or if I'm talking about you to someone else and I say oh my friend here is Latinx, you know what I mean? It's like it's
Yeah,
like well
no,
like
yeah. I get what you're saying, but I think we're thinking too much into it. I think Latinx, one, is to be a more inclusive approach to women in our culture.
how's it
So they,
if
because
anything? I think
you don't have to you don't have to subscribe to Latino culture. No, it could be Latinx. Why? Because it's men and women, and um, I think a lot of it, if I'm being honest, like has to do with like tests. Like when you're taking a test in public school, like a SAT or ACT, and it asks you like, what do you identify as?
oh it usually
Uh,
says Hispanic or Latino, right?
yeah, it's either Hispanic or Latino, and some people had issues with that.
Hmm.
Some people, right?
so. Why is it an issue? That's not what I'm. That's what I'm
Again,
trying to.
it's an issue. It's an issue. Look. I can't speak for
Everyone,
why.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, I can't speak for everyone, but I think it's an issue because
Why,
it's not representative of everybody in that culture, and they don't feel as represented.
why doesn't that represent?
Because it means that the man is the patriarch. It means that the man is in control, that the man controls the culture, and that's in the past.
Huh.
I grew up with a mom that was the head of the house, and that was completely bizarre. When my friends found out, or my Latinx friends found out, it's completely bizarre. My dad was like kind of like a stay-at-home dad. I think it's just like that. It's like everyone has different versions,
Hmm.
and I think Latinx is a way to, again, call in, not call out anybody, call in a more inclusive approach to gender. I mean, to, yeah,
So
to
the
both
thing
women
about
and women.
inclusivity, the problem with inclusivity is you're always going to exclude people, and the people you're always going to exclude is the people that don't agree with it. So,
What?
so
That's
is
fair.
that
That's fair.
Yeah.
is that something that you should be including? If
Yeah.
and
So
I'm probably going to the minority of the population wants to be called Latinx or wants everything changed to Latinx. Is that a gripe that you need a acquisition to other people? Is that something that you need to give them? I don't see
so
the value.
so
I
my
like it's no. I don't see it as real change. I see it as somebody trying to get special points or that somebody finding another reason to be a victim.
yeah, so my biggest concern, and I sort of agree with Aaron, but I also see Abraham's point, right? Like, so Abraham says like to be more inclusive, right? So have a term that describes everyone, right? Not just because yeah, I do it. Yeah, you take a test or you go, I don't know, you go to a presentation and people will usually refer with like the male acronym, like Latino. I don't know, I don't know. Well, Asian's gender neutral, but I don't know. I guess black's also gender neutral, but I guess Latino, Latina, since it's a more it's an older term, I guess.
Yeah, it goes with the culture.
Yeah, it goes with the culture that it was established from. I can understand like the like to have Latinx for the people that maybe don't identify as Latino or Latina, which is fair if we're just gonna add that, right? But then my concern becomes what if someone doesn't identify with Latino, Latina, and then Latinx? Then you bump into the problem that we're having in New York. In New York, I believe there's something like 31 different genders or something like that. Like there's gender neutral, gender bender, what's it called, non-binary, right? So
Yeah,
so in trying to accommodate for all those people, so if Latinx is going to become a norm, then it has to be a consensus that it's like okay, but then again, just like you said, Abraham, like how do I can't speak for everyone, right? What if it's only a small number of people that want that, but then out of that small number, one or two people disagree? Then do we have to accommodate those two people? So
yeah. See, that's the thing. It depends on the lens through which you view it. If you
Mhm.
want to if you're attempting to like a lens through which you I guess want to help the people who are least disadvantaged, which is those people that don't agree with Latinx, then I guess it's not fair to change it. But I think I don't know. The
I
problem with
don't
PC is you're trying to accommodate with too many people.
So
But I think like my last point on this, I also want to point out that I think Latinx is a little elitist. Like using Latinx might be a little elitist because it's the people who are well educated, the people who are scholars, writers, civil rights advocates, more progressive people, more progressive Hispanic identifying people that want this term. And I acknowledge that. It
It's
can
another
be
problem
elitist.
I brought up at the beginning of the conversation.
What's up?
Remember at the beginning of the conversation, I said it's kind of hypocritical for people to try to change the term.
No,
That's
no.
what.
Oh, okay, fair. Okay.
yeah.
Hypocritical. Okay, that's fair.
All right.
Um,
Because
yeah, no, that's what I mean. So I agree with you that it can be hypocritical, but I do want to advance forward. I don't want to speak over you. I do want to advance forward that some people who don't feel represented by Latino, Latina, do see it as a sign of empowerment to be more closer to this identify closely with this racial identity. If
Okay.
that makes sense.
So if this is if this is a if this is sort of like what we're gonna do to like accommodate the people that don't identify with Latino and Latina, I guess I can sort of get behind that, right? Like I guess I'm okay with that, right? The only thing I don't want is if we do throw the bone, right? Like you give that the Latinx, and then we use that in in like American standards, then that's it, right? Like, okay, so Latinx is supposed to be like a term for someone that doesn't identify with like the male or female like pronoun, right? Like because it's non-binary, but then you have to be careful because now you're getting into like the area where it's like, oh well, like I'm not even like, what if someone says I'm not human, right? Like you gotta draw a line somewhere. So
Yeah.
I am okay with the term if it's okay, fair for people that don't identify with either Latino or Latina, and that's who it's for, right? Because majority, and this is true, the majority of people are okay with Latino, Latina, like there's no problem with
Yeah.
that. But for the few, right? For the few that don't, if they want to use this term, then go ahead and use it. Like I don't care, right? Like that's fine. But I just don't want it to be pushed to where like, oh, Latinx isn't enough, let's go somewhere else. Like draw the line, draw the line.
That's fair. That's fair.
It goes back to like people having issue with the word human or chairman or what the World
Oh
Health
yeah,
Organ-
spokesman.
Yeah. So you're trying to change something that doesn't affect you unless you're purposely looking for things change that don't really offend people, or you're choosing to be offended by minuscule things. And one of the words you used, Abraham, was empowerment. People want like this false empowerment from being treated like they're special. When I feel like oftentimes they haven't really done anything to earn to empower themselves as
Uh
people.
huh. I'm listening.
Like they see themselves as being empowered by changing things that don't really matter in the grand scheme.
See, but I don't think we have you and I, Aaron, since we don't have a problem with it. I don't think you and I have the grounds to say what empowers those people and what doesn't empower them.
So
We don't have the like we can't speak for them. We're just talking. It's hearsay because we're looking at it through our lens of being okay with it, and maybe not seeing it as a super necessary thing.
no, but even thinking of it as the way I see it, it all comes back to your mentality. Are you going to choose to be offended by? Are you going to live life choosing to be offended by every little thing, or are you going to embrace life and try to build yourself something? It's not. It doesn't have to be a factor of, oh,
Of
you're a
course,
person
yeah.
that's going through this. It's everybody goes through their problems, and we all face it differently. But you, at the end of the day, you can either choose to overcome it and not let it affect you, or be better because of it, or you can choose to let it consume you and let it eat at you. And a lot of times, what I see with people that subscribe to this mentality is that,
They're playing the victim.
yeah, they live the lifestyle of the victim. They jump for the chance to be the victim. And in some ways, I see it as almost predatory because you're basically living for those brownie points, those victim points. of how can I be the biggest victim and how can I get the most attention for that victim when you haven't really done
Right.
anything that deserves that attention.
But I just before, like, I don't want to beat a dead horse, right? But I don't think it's that they need. I don't know what you just said. Like, it doesn't sit right with me, because people don't need to justify why they feel uncomfortable by not being represented by an X in Latino or Latina. You don't need to justify that, and people have different varying levels of comfortability. Some of which these levels allow people to ignore the fact that they're not represented. Some of which don't allow for people to feel comfortable identifying with this racial identity, to the point where they can just overlook it and just put their head down and grind and don't let it affect them. There's two varying levels of comfortability that you just can't speak for other people who, we can't speak for other people.
So why can't they just develop a thicker skin?
That's like asking, Aaron, that's like asking someone who's been raped why they couldn't have prevented it.
No, because it's a different thing. Being raped, you were actually wronged by a person. You're not being wronged by anybody. When you're when on a paper it says Latino, who's wronging you? Like that is a completely different situation. Rape, somebody attacked you and physically assaulted you against your will. Nobody is attacking you by calling you Latino.
But you can't speak for people who feel attacked by that word, Latino.
Yeah.
Latino represents an institution of a patriarch, like a patriarchal institution, a patriarchal culture that some people are super comfortable and some people aren't super comfortable.
But how is it a patriarchal? How is it a patriarchal?
Latino, man, it's the man. That's a patriarch.
No,
That's what patriarchy means.
Or Latino. It's just a generalization.
Funny enough, it was invented by a Frenchman. Funny enough.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, the word Latino was invented in the 1860s by a Frenchman. I forgot his name, but it was invented by a French guy. And they were just trying to, so like it was like they were having like a census, right? And the U.S. has always been very blended with different cultures, and they just thought that because people migrated from Europe, a lot of like the Hispanics are from Latin descent.
Yeah.
I think we can.
I mean, it's just because it's like then it questions the whole validity of the Spanish culture, because it's all gendered, right? Are we going to change every word to, instead of an O and an A, have an X?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Why would we do that?
In that sense, yeah, it would be ridiculous. Like if we actually shifted the entire culture for it to not be gendered, that'd be. I think that's a stretch, right? Because you would have to rewrite every book. You would have to rewrite every, like everyone would have to get used to it. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's. I don't think that's going to happen, just because I feel like the majority, and I'm talking like 90+%, don't really mind the Latino-Latina type of thing, which is why it's kind of weird that it's like people refer to it as a patriarchy, right? Because if it was truly like a male-dominated patriarchy, but
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
but what like okay, so let's get. I want to get into that just because I hear that a lot, like the whole like the patriarchy. When you're talking about the patriarchy, you're talking about that men dominate certain fields, or you're talking about men dominate, like, I don't know.
Families. So the nuclear family, the nuclear unit. When you think of a Mexican household, I'm speaking from my term, from what I know. The dad is the one labor. The mom is the nurturer, caretaker, staying at the house, and the children look to the dad for discipline, and the children look for the mom for nurturing. Right? So the man is at the head of the house. That's what I mean by patriarchy. I don't mean by like.
Okay.
So what creates the? So I guess what I'm basing off of that. What creates the greatest success, statistically speaking? Like what is
like what's most efficient? Probably.
What leads to the most successful?
I can't. I have no idea. You probably have like insights into that. I don't.
Well, when you say success, what do you mean? Success to what?
Like money?
No,
if it's money, then this works. If it's not money, then I don't know.
I mean, success to where your children are like healthy.
Wait. Wait. Okay, so hold on. Are we talking about? Are we talking now about like what leads to the successful development of a child, or are we talking about a happy? Are we talking about like a happy house life?
Yeah, like what leads to the most successful form of life?
I actually can answer that. Okay, so like you mean okay, so you're talking about the development of a child, right? What is like the most optimal way to raise a child? I guess, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So in terms of So the studies show that having a mom and a dad is definitely optimal. Like period.
Yeah.
Like there's no way around it.
So the nuclear family.
Yeah, the nuclear family is the most optimal, right? But now we live in a society where it's like where the woman can work and then the conversation isn't happening. See this is the part where that gives me a headache, right? If we're supposed to be like if we're talking about the third wave like modern feminists, right? They're talking about how women are supposed to go out there and get jobs, right? They're supposed to like push the limits, become CEOs, be multi-billionaires or whatever, you know what I mean? But like the other side, men are also raised to be, that same thing, right? But that conversation isn't happening. Like the conversation of, oh, it's okay to be a male caretaker. That's just in a lot of like guys' heads that doesn't make sense. And not even
Doesn't mine.
Well, but it's not that it. But again, well, maybe for you, right? Then that's fine. Again, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, no, I would love to be a stay-at-home dad. Ooh.
Like again, I think your brother too, but that's another story. But what's it called? Like I don't care if you want to be a stay-at-home dad, but a lot of guys, right? Okay, so this is very rooted in biology, right? And I hate that sometimes people will throw this out the window. Like women by nature are nurturers, right? So you could tell a woman like socially like, oh no, it's like being a mother is not what you want. Like you will be happier if you are super successful and you just go out there and get it, right? But there are women that don't want that. Actually, a majority of women actually do want to be mothers, right? And that's not even even if they're raised differently. A lot of them like it's just there's like that itch, right? There's like it's like a biological feeling that they're like, yeah, like it's like something is not filling the void, right? And then for men, from a biological sense, okay, let me put it in simpler terms. The biggest differences that men and women have in the most simple, like bare bones simple terms, is that men are more interested in things, and women are more interested in people, right? So even if you tell a woman, okay, go and shoot for the skies, become a CEO, you already have the studies that are being done in Europe. Most women will go into the humanities, right? And I'm not talking like teaching and librarians and stuff. I'm talking medical fields, surgeons, like hardcore neuro scientists, like these like women are super interested in people, right? In every aspect of the word. Like they dominate the health fields. They dominate like in education. They dominate in universities as well in research, right? Like but those are people oriented jobs. In the other hand, when you look at men, a lot of them like to get down in the dirt, right? There's more policemen, more military guys, more STEM fields.
Men want to provide.
Mm-hmm. And it's not even about providing. It's just a different like wants, right? So if you go and tell a woman, it's like, oh, like no, becoming a CEO is what you want, when that's really not what they want, then it's rough. It's like you're stopping a woman from wanting to be a stay-at-home mom, which is a probably, in my opinion, the most noble profession out there. Period. Like just like the most noble profession. Like wanting to just stay home and raise your kids is probably one of like the most beautiful things ever. And right now, I feel like it's being forgotten. Like I don't know what I would have done without my mom. You know what I mean? So, if anyone wants to keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to go back to like what we were talking about, which I completely lost our train of thought.
Well, so
Oh wait, before can we conclude? Can we conclude before we move on? Because reflecting on our discussion about like Latinx and like
do you want to do like a yay or nay or like a maybe? If you're okay with changing the term.
Oh, I'm definitely okay with changing the term Latinx, but I don't think I want to see every other word be replaced with like X's.
I to some degree would be okay. Oh, go ahead, Aaron.
So hear me out. I'm just gonna say Latinx, and I want you guys to give me a yay, or a nay, or a maybe. And you just be honest. So Latinx.
Definitely yay.
Maybe.
And can I say why? Because even though I don't love it.
Closing statement. This is closing statement. So before we move on to, and I want to go back to talking about masculinity and femininity.
Please. My final thing. Because of the fact that we're talking about racial identity, gender identity, I think Latinx does its purpose in bringing awareness. Like, we may not agree with it, but it's definitely bringing awareness of gender as a potential non-binary thing, right? For people who identify as gay, queer, transgender. And that's all I'm saying. Like, that's all. I'll leave it at that. It brought awareness to us, even though we don't have to agree with it. It got us to talk about it, which is
Yeah,
a start.
I agree. Yeah, talking about it is good. All right, so
Masculinity, Aaron. Masculinity. You said that.
So we're gonna. So what I want to start with is, for example, femininity. So you guys say how like it'd be great to be stay-at-home dads, right?
I mean,
So
obviously, making a passive income and being a stay-at-home dad. I want to make that clear.
so one of the things that happens in like I guess just the dating world. Um, when you look at statistically what females and males tend to look for in partners, uh, males tend to look for a physicality. Um, it's very much off the wall. Do I find this person attractive or not? And then you build from there. Versus females, it usually stems from a place of security. Is this person going to be financially stable? How much income do they have? What type is this the type of person that's good for raising a family? And then looks tends to play like near the very end when it comes to building that foundation. So saying that, I think something that with the rise of these women that are very powerful, you're seeing that a lot of these women don't find men that meet those goals, and a lot of them have to date down, and they almost don't want to date down. A lot of them don't want to date down because it for a man it's, and I think that's the beauty of the a man's attraction when it comes to female. It doesn't discriminate race. It doesn't discriminate gender or not gender. It doesn't discriminate. Well, yes, gender, um, but it doesn't discriminate for socioeconomic means or weight or if you like a girl and you like the way she looks. It doesn't have to do anything with their background. Versus females, it's very much orientated around that sense of security, and because they don't want to date down, a lot of these females tend to get to their 30s and they realize they didn't make anything. Like they didn't want to be where they were, they're not where they want to be. Essentially,
So your point is, where I'm
is,
listening.
is it possible to have a family dynamic and while not accounting for outliers? Do you think the is it that it's possible to have a reversal of the nuclear family?
I I
Definitely.
I okay, so I got some numbers for this one actually because I actually discussed this so back when I was in College Station, I had a friend. His name is Nathan. If you're watching, Nathan, shout out because I told him to come watch. And we had a lot of like he's like probably the one that opened my eyes in terms of like or my mind basically in terms of like making sure that you have like the facts absolutely right before you start like developing like an opinion. Just because well you can still develop an opinion like you can disagree with something, but I read and I remember that the nuclear family, of course, it's like it's not the be all say all, right? There's all sorts of like households across America, right? But in terms of flipping it, right? Because that's true, and that's not really a biological thing, but now that the workplace used to be dominated by men, that's fact, right? It used to be dominated by men, and now we have a lot of women coming into the workplace. So a lot of women, whether you admit it or not, the financial security was something that they were looking at because they were looking to be, caretakers. Now, if the roles were going to reverse, well, it's kind of hard to do that because the feminist movement now is saying that you have to work and men like and you don't need men, right? So now then what do you do? So now this is specifically for like speaking specifically to the feminists. So then what do we do, right? Like that's the debacle that we're talking about right now. How are we going to find a solution in order to where the roles can be reversed, right? Because if there are people that do want to do that, then and I'm pretty sure it does happen. I have seen stay-at-home dads. That's not an uncommon thing. But how do you tell how do you tell a girl, right, that you need to shoot for the sky, be a CEO, and let's face it, if you become a CEO, chances of you starting a family are very slim because your life is pretty much that company unless you decide to retire. That's usually how it is. Bill and Melinda Gates, they didn't really spend a lot of time with their kids. Not that I'm aware of. I know Elon Musk, he just had his kid, but I remember when he was with Joe Rogan, he was like dead, like he was just tired. And people don't really realize the amount of work that like in order to like you're telling women to strive for the top, right? But that comes with a lot of sacrifices, right? So now it just depends. Are you willing to have a partner that will stay at home, right? And the answer typically is no. Women typically again will look for a partner that is financially more secure than them. But if you're making all this money, right? If you're this successful and then you're looking for a partner and then you also want them to be like as successful as you, right? Like, well, you're asking like that, like the standard has shifted tremendously up, and the numbers back it up. There's a record number of virgins in the U.S. than ever. It's something like 26% of like kids between 18 and 24 that have just never had sex, and that number keeps rising.
Is that because of the increase in population, or is it ratio? Is
No,
it
no,
like,
no, no.
is it
It's ratio. It's by ratio. It's by ratio. So the number keeps rising.
I would love to see that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I would have to get the stat. I forget what university had it. I forget what university have it, but I can pull it up. It's something like 26, 27%, and it's rising. And I really believe that it's I believe that it's because they're forcing a norm that just people really don't want, right? You know what I mean? And
The norm of women reaching for CEO.
no,
like,
no,
higher
no.
positions.
Yeah. So again, I'm not saying that there can't be women like that, but because women tend to be, again, going back to psychology, right? Because women tend to be more agreeable, it's harder for them to get like those high CEO positions unless they have a change of mindset, right? But again, that goes back to sacrifice. They have to be sacrificing the fact that, okay, I have to put a hold on my personal life because I'm pursuing a career, right? Which
What does that have to do with virginity? Does that mean?
no,
No.
No. The correlation that I was making was that it's not working, right? Like people are like it's like again, because we're trying to bring the family together, right? But we have both men and women competing against each other and not getting together. Why? Because men are looking for women that can take care of like their kids. Not all of them, but generally that's what they're looking for. But now,
I see what you're trying to say. Got it.
But now you have women that are competing, and then just like Aaron said, they're looking for a financially stable guy, right? But if they're already doing better, then they're not even going to look at you. And I've seen this, like they're not even going to bat an eye at you. So
Emotionally is a toy.
yeah, and and now you have a bunch of guys that really can't like they're being told that what they're doing is wrong, right? That you have to give women, like you have to let women do all these things, right? And I feel like telling them that isn't really going to help them. If they want to do that, by all means. If you want to be a woman, you want to be a CEO, you want to shoot for the stars, that's fine. I don't have any issues, right? But making it into a social thing where it's like, oh, we have to like keep pushing this, right? It's like, no, it's like the data has been proven. In Europe, the egalitarian countries, which got rid of all of the social norms, which is, okay, everyone shoot for the stars, you can do whatever you want, everyone has the same opportunity. The gender different, the biological differences went to the extremes. Like more men were doing STEM jobs and getting CEO positions, and women were going again into the humanities and stuff like that, right? So the data shows that this movement that they're trying to push, where the woman has to shoot for the stars, clearly for the majority, I'm not saying everyone, for the majority, it doesn't seem to be making them happy. So I
appreciate you said that for the majority and not everyone.
Yeah,
because we're making like a grandiose amount of generalizations from the beginning.
Well, this is not this one's not a generalization. If you go to PubMed and you actually look at that study, I forgot the name of the professor. You go to PubMed and you look up the psychological study in the egalitarian Scandinavian countries. The social experiment did not, like, the results were not what they wanted. Women were doing.
No, of course. I don't mean it just for like your comment. I mean it since like Aaron's like the beginning. I don't know. I just want to like make sure that we're operating under a lot of assumptions that we're making for others.
Specifics as we go. So I'm always going to start broadly ideas. We're going to get into the specifics as we get deeper into the conversation. It's not when it seems like I'm generalizing. Usually when it's the reason I pose it as a question and is because the idea is that we're going to get into the specifics. The goal is
I know. Perfect. With that being said, like I understand completely then. But then we're operating under a lens that's very a lens that's assuming a lot of different generalizations, which is perfectly fine if we want to get into the details. But we just have to acknowledge the fact that a lot of assumptions are being made.
Yeah, it's good to start with the general, and then that's when you can start poking around with the questions.
Yeah.
What
was the main question? Like the
how to
family unit.
Yeah, so basically the family unit. Is it possible to shift the nuclear family in order to make it work for like the development of a child? So for me, no. I really think that the traditional household And then, even people that even the nuclear family, there's a lot of factors that go into that. Is the father are the mom and dad competent, right? Because anyone can have a kid. Anyone can have a kid. Have a you could like have sex with a woman and then all of a sudden you have to raise a kid because you have to, right? There's no way around it. But what if they're not ready, or what if they don't have the knowledge to do it, right? Because I've seen plenty of normal families that don't succeed, or their kids turn into drug addicts eventually, right? That's
That's a jump.
huh?
Yeah, that's a jump.
Well, because it's true. Because
Yeah,
again,
yeah, yeah.
again, I still believe that the nuclear family is your best chance for success. It's not the only, right? Like I'm not discounting single mothers that are super women, right? Like that they're just like
Of course, of
are
course.
like the shit, and I'm not discounting two father or two mother households because those can work.
Yeah,
But in my final answer is that the nuclear family is still the best
it's the
chance,
most
is the
optimal.
most
Got
optimal
it.
chance for success for the development of a child. So
Got it.
that's me.
But the question was, what's the most? Not what? Not the question was, what isn't the most optimal? It was, can it work? Right?
I don't know, Aaron. What was the question? You were the one that asked it.
What I'm trying to get to is the, the what I was trying to get to is like, can other forms like,
Uh huh.
is there something that competes with the nuclear family? Can you have do you believe that so I personally believe that the way I view the nuclear family, um so for example, let's say I had a wife, right? If my wife told me she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, I'd support her through it because, and I think that's one of the things that if I do get married to somebody, I would want my wife to be a stay-at-home mom because, speaking from personal experience, the way me and my brothers were raised, with me, my mom, both my parents working, and never being able to really spend time with them, versus how my brothers have turned out, and the fact that they're able to spend time with my mother a lot more, and she's able to
Hmm.
really initiative in their lives, and just the achievements that they can make that I necessarily couldn't make because my not having that access to
Yeah.
the nurture aspect of my family. And it's one of those things where I think what's taken for granted is how beneficial it is to our society when um, do say that being a stay-at-home mom is probably one of the the best jobs that you could have. That any it's one of the most selfless jobs that anybody can perform because it is a job of sacrifice. There is no like, parenting's hard because you're not seeing any upfront reward. The reward you're seeing is your kids are going to be a step above the ones around you. Uh, and that's the thing. That's the beauty of the stay-at-home mother.
Yeah, I
Um,
really appreciate that the narrative you shared, Aaron. Thank you. That was cool. Uh, and I can totally see your point. Like both of you are, I guess, one through an emotional and or more personal narrative, and George, you through a more like biological, empirical, data driven answer, reaching the same conclusion. I want to like bring forward the fact my own perspective, which is like I have first-handedly seen like a really non-traditional nuclear family. Like I was raised where my mom made the entire income, and my dad would be like the stay-at-home dad, or maybe he would like, I don't know. Anyways, I don't want to get too into it, but my mom was not only the nurturer but also the income maker and like the leader. She made all the decisions. Am I saying it's like perfect? No, like there was a lot of not to get too personal, but like there's a lot of like things that like tensions and like the things that happen because like the roles were reversed, right? You're
yeah,
told the man is supposed to told that you're the provider, and when you're not, like what something happens. So, but it's totally possible. Is it the most optimal? Probably not. Like probably not, but it is definitely possible. And like, what were you saying, Aaron? I totally interrupted you.
so do you think that if like so I don't want you to be honest. Do you think if you were raised in I guess the perfect nuclear family versus compared to your mom being head of household, do you think you would have grown up better?
Uh,
Do you feel
that's super difficult to answer, but I'm gonna say I would have been. That's impossible for me to say. I don't know. I think I would have personally enjoyed it more maybe because I would have like seen the template and then done it myself. But I'm glad it was like against the grain because it gives me a perspective through which I can challenge that normal traditional role. That's not answering your question saying it's better, but it's saying I'm being honest and saying I like the way I was raised and I totally see if I could do it again I would do it the same exact way.
that's interesting? Um, I respect that. I'm knowing you personally, knowing just like the things that your family's been through. I think I do have a lot of respect to your mother because I've seen her work ethic. Ridiculous. I've also seen your father's work ethic and how it sometimes seems like um and the issues that happen in your family because of the financial matters that were going on. And the way that you handled it, I think it also brings to the fact that having both parents, well, it may not necessarily be the best situation in terms of financial. I think having both parents and um, having it so that both your parents have at least each other to rely on,
Uh-huh.
I think that just adds to a different level where and there's some cultures where being a single mother or it I think one of the things that and what I was getting to where are other types of families like should they be seen as successes. I think one of the ones that I love to bring is single mother.
Single mothers, yeah.
This is a really good transition because before we when we had the idea for this podcast, I remember that we were going to talk about creating like a perfect like a perfect society, even though there's no such thing, right? But I think this is a really good segue to talk about. I think that single motherhood is definitely a huge issue that is I think is like one of the biggest plagues in the United States, but it's rarely talked about. Like the numbers are astonishing. Oh, by the way, Abraham, just before we move on, just before we move on, from the General Social Survey, it's right here. A 3-decade trend starting from 1989 to 2018. From the ages between 18 to 29, the numbers went from 14% of like not like reporting of not have not had sex to 23%. So it's currently at about 23%, which is an all-time high. And overall, 23% of the U.S. population is not having sex. Which is
Wow, that's crazy.
which
Okay,
is
cool.
which
Thank
is
you for
which
that.
is
Thank
up
you.
which is up from 8. So overall, is up from 18% to 23%. So overall, it went up 4%. But for the ages of 18 to 29, it went up almost 10%.
Yeah, yeah, wow.
So if you look at the numbers, it's kind of crazy how like again these social norms that are happening are not bringing people together. Like telling you that you're
We
gonna.
definitely, yeah, we definitely have to make another discussion with this, like virginity in America, definitely.
So
I have a lot to say about.
we'll save that one for another time because right now we've just segued into single motherhood, which I think is the so. You cannot bring out single motherhood without bringing the Black Lives Matter movement. Why? Because I believe because the Black Lives Matter is so like with what just happened. And I think it's good that we talk about what just happened in Minnesota about with George Fry. Is it Fryer? Hold on, let me look up his name. George Floyd. So with what happened with George Floyd, so there was a protester and this cop. I don't want to say he brutally murdered, but he definitely killed him. Like he for sure like
Yeah.
he like that was murder. He killed him for stepping on his neck for too long. Like there was people around. Everyone saw that he was already apprehended. He was under a car. Like what the hell?
Pretty brutal, yeah.
Yeah. Like he was, and the guy was saying that he couldn't breathe. Now this guy, in my opinion, is incompetent. This cop rightfully got his badge taken away. He got fired. If he gets some time in jail, I would be totally okay with it. But just like other times where where black people were murdered by white policemen, it's like a lot of those, and I can't bring up every single case, right? But I think out of like the 11 cases that I saw, I think 8 of them were justified and 3 of them were legitimate, either like stupidity or racism. Like you can make that case, but I don't like that the general consensus is that that black like LeBron James said that black men like every time black people come out of their house they're being chased down. Like that's nonsense. If that truly was if that truly was the case, then we would be seeing way more news about that, because it's such a sensational thing. Like when like people like to really talk about it when it happens, right?
Yeah.
But let's think about it. They're very rare, and because they're so rare, that's why they're on the news, right? So,
What do you mean they're very rare? Police brutality events?
yeah, police brutality events. They are in the hundreds. Like, well, actually, hundreds things. I think it's a little high. I would have to bring up the number from the
They're
FBI.
higher. Yeah, no, I don't think they're that rare anymore. They're very common.
No.
On the news, no, on the news they're common because that's what they bring up. But I don't think in general it's like a problem, right? I don't think it's like a huge deal. Okay, so but before we get off topic, because I'm getting off topic.
Women.
Yeah. So I actually believe that the one thing that is plaguing both African Americans and Hispanic Americans more than anything is the single motherhood rate in America. Like I think that is the single worst the single thing that is keeping them from moving forward, right? Because the numbers are so high. In the African American community, it's 70 to 75% are you're likely to grow up without a father, and with Hispanics, it's about 50 to 52%. And again, if you want me to pull it up, I will look it up and I will pull it up. I will pull it up. I just have to find it.
Going on that, I almost feel like in a lot of ways it's kind of idolized in our society. Where
What is idolized?
It's almost seen as a positive thing to be a single mother.
I agree.
Like, oh, you're getting your baby daddy's money, or it's almost like
What?
I've seen girls in school who were and I remember this in high school, who got pregnant, never got with the guy,
Mm-hmm.
but that one time, and that guy's paying child support, and she's just living off of that.
Like seeing like a single motherhood as idolized. I think
Yes.
maybe a portion of the American population sees it like that.
I don't think
Maybe another.
I don't think it's idolized. So I get what Aaron's saying.
What is he saying? Because I'm confused.
So this Aaron, this
It's not seen as a bad thing. It's seen as almost like a good thing.
I see what you mean. Okay, no, I got what he's saying. Okay, so I actually had this discussion. Well, I didn't have the discussion. I just kind of brought it up, and then my friend yelled at me. That's kind of how it went. But this is what happened. So the reason that I don't think it's idolized, but it's seen as like an empowering thing. What do I mean by that? Like it's an empowering thing, because I remember I'm a huge basketball fan. You guys know this. I love watching the NBA, and I cannot tell you how many documentaries I have seen where it's I think it was Allen Iverson, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, like all of the big names. If you look at their documentaries, all of them grew up with a single mom. But the way that the documentary frames it is like, oh my god, like my mom was my rock, she did everything, and I'm not discounting that. Like for them, for what they did for the kids, the sacrifices they had to make, that's awesome. Like good for them, right? But then it's never brought up. Like, why is it literally you go to the NBA and you look at a lot of the documentaries, and a lot of them, and I mean a lot of them, I'm talking like more than 50%, grew up without a mom, right? Grew up without a father, right? And a lot of them will always give you that the little sobbing stories, like, yeah, my mom did like so many, like did all of this and that. It's like, well, okay, well, let's get to the root of that. Why are they growing up without dads, right? And why is it that because all of these documentaries are so positive towards like, oh, my mom is my rock, right? Like a lot of them have like the idea that's like, oh my god, I'm gonna make it to the NBA, right? Let me tell, and I think that's definitely like a culture thing, because let me tell you what happened between the 80s and the 2000s. In the 1980s, you had Charles Barkley and Michael Jordan, both of them in interviews say, it's like, what do you say to a kid that wants to join the NBA? And both of them, I kid you not, said, kids, stay in school. Like, if you have the gift, then go for it. But honestly, like the chance of you making it to the NBA is that's a dream. Like it's better for you to like stick in school and stay off drugs. Like, they would say like stuff like that. Now today the narrative is everyone should follow their dream and shoot for the stars, right? Well, what do you do when you have millions of people trying to join the NBA? You only have 30 teams with rosters of 15 players. If you look at the number,
it's a very niche thing, yeah.
Yep. So now you're looking at high school. Like the number of people that make it to Division I colleges from high school is only 2% of athletes, and then from that 2%, you get a pool of about 60 people per year, and that's out of that 60 people. That's if you like are creme de la creme, you will stay on your roster before you get cut, and then you're forgotten by. So so why is it such a good thing that all of these kids are just being they're being thrown into a lottery pool to see who has like the genetic gift, like LeBron James is definitely genetically gifted. He is gifted beyond belief. He's talented for sure, but not like if you tell a kid you can do whatever, like you can shoot for the stars and do whatever you set your mind to, and then his dream is to become president or become like I don't know, something that is very very hard to do, right? Now I'm not saying to not encourage the kid, right? But telling them that they can do absolutely everything is unrealistic, right? Like if you want to be, let's say, like for example, if you want to be a writer, right? Let's say that you want to be J.K. Rowling and you want to write Harry Potter and you want to be like a billionaire, right? Well, how about instead of becoming a writer, how about you get a stable job? Just kind of like you said, like you want to be, like you said, it'd be awesome if you were a stay-at-home dad with passive income. That's awesome, right? So start something, a business, or get a job, or get somewhere, or start something where you can actually be making money, and on the side, be writing those books, right? Because unless you're like incredibly gifted and you just cannot, and you're Stephen King, you can just pump out books every 6 months, because I really don't know how that guy does it, but unless you're Stephen King or someone with like incredible writing talent, it's like chances of that happening are really slim. So you have to support communities. I feel like the narrative has to change to where we focus on working hard and achievable dreams or smart ways to achieve those dreams. You know what I mean? In case they don't happen, because telling them that they will happen is really not helping out.
Well, I think it has to do with the fact that people want to be their heroes, and a lot of times in the ghetto, like in ghettos or you. So growing up, I came from a very poor household, and I can tell you that having here, like to a kid who's your kid, you want you have your grandiose ideas of the world, what you want to be, and a lot of the times you want to be your heroes, and that's your escape. Your escape from society is pretending to be your heroes, whether it's an NBA star or a scientist. And I think one of the things that does play into that effect is your the heroes of society has changed. Heroes that um, the people that our society celebrates is celebrity culture or athletic culture, where that becomes the escape for people rather than like back in the 1900s where if you were an astronaut, you were bigger than any celebrity. If you were a scientist, you were super popular. And I feel like that shift in our culture where we don't necessarily look towards the best and the brightest of us, and now we just look for the. I guess.
Hello?
Give me a sec. So now we just use the people that. So now we're just using the people that the people that we currently view as heroes are the people that, in a lot of ways, are and I'm not using I'm using the term lightly, but like the freaks in our society. And by freaks, I'm not using it in a derogatory term. I mean they're genetically different. They're the people that are genetically exceptional versus the people where you can achieve degrees and you can work your way up to the STEM field and you can become very successful. But that has to be a problem with our culture where instead of celebrating celebrity and celebrating people that don't really know, um, that don't really have that high level of intelligence, where we should be celebrating like the what I consider the best among us, which is the scientists, the astronauts,
Oh.
Navy SEALs, and
Aaron, so are you trying to say, I think George might have said this the best. Are you trying to say that the people in our society who we idolize are maybe not the best people that we should be idolizing
Not the best role models. They're not the best role models, I think is the best way
be-
to put it. So
because
like
we don't,
yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, so basically, Aaron's saying that it's like we idolize people in Hollywood. Like just recently, John Boyega chipped in on the whole George Floyd, right? And just like LeBron James, they're saying that black people are being hunted down left and right, which I again think is nonsense. Like that's not true. Um, but that doesn't help anyone. That's a dangerous narrative, right? Because it happened again. Look at it. That's why I say look at it from an individual level. The guy committed a crime. It was awful. His badge was taken away. Hopefully, he does time, right? So he's been taken care of, right?
George, we have to go back to single women. We're getting
Oh
way
yeah,
off topic.
yeah, we are
This is
definitely
not. This
yeah,
does not.
yeah.
Yeah.
This is definitely way off
Advance
topic.
our conversation.
Yeah, this is definitely way off topic. So yeah, well, actually, I don't know. I think maybe because I actually this ties up into like the whole culture, right? So what Aaron's trying to say is that if we instead of idolizing again, so this is very general. This is a very big generalization,
Uh-huh.
but among African Americans, you know, they idolize the Ti's of the world, the Kanyes, the Beyonces, um, I don't know, the Black Panthers. You know what I mean? Like that, like they're very big on their own race, which is, you know, that's fine. You can have you can have pride in your people, right? Um, but if those people are not sending the right message, then you're not gonna be really making. If like you got to be careful with who you idolize, right? Which can create a problem. Which is, you know,
Uh-huh.
the shifting culture is the thing that has to happen in order for like the African Americans and the Hispanics to go above and beyond. You know, get to the, I guess for the sake of this argument, to the level of that the whites are at. I guess.
So, but I'm having trouble relating that to the conversation we were having about single motherhood. Is that, uh, I don't know. I see your point in that maybe African Americans and Latinx people could have a shift in like role models and yeah, that would be very helpful. But how what is that? In what way or shape or form does that relate to single
Yeah.
motherhood?
So again, a solution for me would be to have a shift in culture, right? Because again, just because Aaron brought up how like not that it's encouraged, right? But it's almost like celebrated that
Uh-huh.
being a strong single mother is good.
It
When
is celebrated.
yeah, it is. That's what I'm saying. Like that, maybe it should not be celebrated. I guess we lost track of like the main points, but when you see these documentaries of like all these like awesome basketball players that are being raised by single mothers, it's like, well, just like Aaron said, those guys are freaks of nature. Um, but at the same time, they're also
I
having
see, I see, I see, I
they
see.
also have the single mothers, right? Like why do they all happen to have single, like they never talk about why they were alone. Like why is it that there are so many single mothers? So my solution would be to have a shift in culture change, like take responsibility. Um, Take responsibility. Like if you're gonna have a kid, then be ready to take care of them until the end, right? Which is
But we're having two separate conversations.
yeah.
I think single motherhood should be uh celebrated because like they're doing their best with what they got. Isn't it like don't you both agree that like get yourself up by the bootstraps and do your best and put your best foot forward? Isn't that the epitome of what a single mother's trying to do? Like what other option do they have?
Well,
Right? They're trying. They're trying.
well, to
So
me,
why shouldn't they be celebrated?
go ahead, Aaron.
The thing is, a lot of the times they fall short, and that is all we've seen. So I think the solution that I personally love, and I think it's a really good solution, is instead of um, while embracing
Mm-hmm.
single mothers, I think is fine. I think one of the greatest solutions that you should have is you should have mentorship programs where these kids are given heroes. Essentially, they get access to people that they can have as heroes that will help them in their developmental stages.
Mm-hmm.
So my opinion's a little different. Like to me, it's all about responsibility, right? Um, if you're gonna have a kid, right, it's not just for you to bail on them, right? Because that seems to be like the culture that we're living in, which sucks. Like, of course, I don't know if celebrating. I don't know if I would use the word celebrate a single mother because the fact that it's happening so frequently, I don't know why. I don't know why we're celebrating that, right? Because the numbers are astronomically high within minority groups. So to me, it's more about responsibility, right? Like there has to be a cultural shift where you're not hooking up with deadbeat dads. You're not hook.
Because at a young age, you would have kids that they get to meet like police officers or firemen members of the military.
Well, but
or-
that still doesn't solve the root of the question. The root question is why is
What
this,
is the question? Because I forgot.
though the question is why is the single motherhood rate so high? Like why is it like what are some solutions that we can find in order to solve that problem? I mean, yeah, I mean,
The-
I mean, looking up to policemen, yeah, sure, but it's you still live with a single mother. How do you?
If that was the question from the beginning, we have not answered it whatsoever. We've just
Yeah.
talked about a potential solution of changing your narrative for people who are raised by single mothers. That's it.
Well, that's
If
what.
we're asking why we have like you started at first and then you went on a tangent and we completely lost you. But you had such a good point at the beginning, like why, and you explained why we had single mothers
Yeah.
more.
So again, so my solution would be like again the culture shift. We have to give responsibility back into like the home, right? Like if you're gonna have a kid, don't be looking for again if you want to look for a responsible partner like Aaron's saying like marry like a police officer or a I don't know a fireman or a navy or like a soldier,
Have mentorship program.
but is that the mentorship program for the family like the couple or is it a mentorship program for the kid?
Mentorship programs to the kid.
That still doesn't solve the fact that he's living with a single mother. It might help him for sure.
You're
It-
changing your heroes.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. And you're potentially changing his view of how he wants to raise a family.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay, I see. So you're saying like okay, single mother with a kid, and the mom takes him to a mentorship program where he's learning about the responsibilities of. Okay, so I guess that's an immediate fix, right? That's an immediate fix for the kid, right?
Yeah, I think that would create a lot of success because instead of learning the athleticism or having these talents are the only way to get out of.
Becoming a rapper, selling weed, or going into basketball. That's like the general. Those are like the big three things that. Those are like. Yeah, that apparently that's the only thing they can do, which is awful that that's the narrative.
Yeah, and you're changing the narrative to like you're showing you there's other ways to raise yourself out of these environments. And I think one of the many benefits that you'll see is that's one of the ways that you could lift a society area where you have a low income threshold because by having those mentorship programs they'll be able to be the change. So let's say there's going to be police. Well, if you have people that are raised, they're becoming and replacing the police force that is there, you're going to see a lot of growth, as well as not just replacing the police force, but if you have that kind of interaction with the police and the locality.
Yeah, I see that. I see. Yeah. I see what you're trying to say.
people's
Healthier
lives
relationships. Yeah. Right.
are going to be invested in the growth of that area, and they're going to be invested in the people in that area.
Yeah, totally. I think if we're gonna continue having a discussion like this, I think we should stop focusing on like the African American demographic and like focus on like this is like Latino thoughts, no? What options do we have? Like if you're a child and you have a single mother and you identify as Mexican or Latinx, what options do you have?
Race, as much as it has to do with your social economic.
No, but I'm asking this question. I'm asking a new question.
What's
Like
the question?
what options does a kid with a single mom who identifies within a family of like a Mexican family or a Latinx family, what options do they have?
In terms of like success, like in order for them to have the highest rate of success.
No, like because you said selling weed, becoming a basketball player. That was for I think I'm assuming that was for like African Americans.
That's the narrative that's thrown around in generally in the African American community. It's like
right, but I want to talk about that because I don't have any experience into what that
I see
life,
what you mean.
lifestyle is. What is it for our
For
culture? Because
Latinos,
I-
like
we-
how to
yes.
fix it.
No. Like what do people strive for when we're young?
Being a soccer player mainly.
Being a soccer player, yeah.
That's like the biggest one. But I mean but again, that's more of a Mexico thing. I don't know if the same Hispanic people that live in the US strive to be like a soccer player. Like that's like the general thing in Mexico, right? But here again, so see it's cuz like
Right. So if we can't even like define what what a Mexican kid with a single mom in a single mom household what kind of hero they have, then we can't speak at all for what kind of hero like any other culture has because we can't even define our own. Like
That's
that's
that's not true because the question is why is the single motherhood rate so high? And it's already and statistically proven people that live generally with a single mom tend to have a higher chance to end up in prison in a gang and involved with a gang or to be or to be a lot more
have a
violent,
kid.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like me in general, regardless of the culture, I think that the responsibility has to go back to like the family, right? Because right now we live in a society that kind of it treats sex pretty much like a transaction, right? It's like, oh, like you and I, let's just have like a one night stand, right? But within all that, you're gonna have a bunch of, you're gonna have issues every now and then if you are like very sexually active. You're gonna pop out a kid, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh well, I didn't want him, and then this jumps into like the abortion case, right? So I think that the fix, like the overall fix, at least for me, would be to start treating sex more of like a relationship thing, right? Like it shouldn't be like, in my opinion, it shouldn't be something that just can be thrown around just anywhere, because I feel like
But
that.
that's like, yeah, I see your point totally. Like having it be more meaningful. But
Mhm.
then that's totally like discriminating people who just want to have casual sex.
Well,
Because
again,
people don't want to have it. If people just want to have casual sex and people um, don't want to see it as a special thing, it's their right to not see it as a special thing.
yeah, but even if you have contraceptives, you still have like a 1 or 2% chance of the contraceptive not working. So now that then this would jump into like the whole abortion thing. Like, are you gonna take
Yeah,
responsibility
yeah,
for the
yeah.
kid? So you know what I mean? Like you like regardless of whether you think you want to have, like, again, if you want to get your rocks off, whatever, do it. But there's still a risk with that. There's still a risk to that. You know what I mean? And not
I lost. Yeah, I lost where our discussion went
well, your
because we're
discussion
talking
was
about so many things.
your question was on what is it that Latino kids strive for, and why is it
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
but I again, to me it's not so much what the Latino kids strive for. To me the underlying issue is why is the single motherhood rate so high? Like how can we lower that number?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like
And
to
then going, so and then a thing you brought up, Butters, is like childhood heroes for like Mexicans. I don't know about you, but my childhood hero when I was in Mexico were like Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., which was like a famous boxer.
Mm-hmm.
hmm
I know a lot of people who they thought the way that they were gonna get out was by fighting.
Oh yeah, that makes like boxing.
Yes.
hmm
Oh. My childhood hero was my mom, which is super rare, like super weird, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I'm
No,
gonna be honest. Like, I don't hear that. I rarely hear
yeah.
that. I think that's
that's
awesome.
awesome. That's awesome. My childhood, who was my childhood hero? Probably my dad. If I had to actually guess, probably my dad. Yeah, my dad was always, well. Both my parents were there for me. My mom was a little rougher around the edges, but I think it's because my dad was very compassionate, and my mom was definitely the disciplinarian. So I guess that's why I have sort.
That's weird, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's weird.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's not traditional. That's
hmm
cool.
Yeah. Well, I guess I want to segue into the next topic because this was something that I do definitely want to touch before we end the podcast. Is we'll get back to single motherhood. I guess we didn't really
Yeah.
reach many solutions for that one. But now let's think about it. Do you think that abortion? Okay, I guess I'll phrase it like this. Do you think that abortion is a valid solution? Uh, I guess not to lower the single mother, that's too harsh to say, to lower the single motherhood rate, but that's a little too harsh of a question. But uh, do you think that the quality of life of the kid is so let's say that, okay, let me phrase it like this. Let's say that a kid is born, right? And
Mhm.
because of his circumstance he's gonna have a super shitty life. Do you think that justifies the mom should if the mom knows that that's the kind of life he's gonna have, does that justify an abortion?
Yes.
Okay, explain.
Yeah. Think of a. I'll give you two perspectives, right? One an emotional one and one an economic perspective. Let's start with the economic one. If a family, boyfriend and girlfriend, they have a kid unexpectedly, and they don't have the means to raise the kid, um, like it's their mistake as two individuals to not bring the child into life. Why? Because like if they don't have the means to barely support themselves, they're not emotional. They're not much. They're like they haven't even developed um into like adults, and they have a kid, and then why bring the kid into the earth if they can't even support it? And so then create like a family in poverty. That's like just a tiny tidbit, tiny glimpse into the economic side, and then like emotional side, like if a mom does not have the mental stability to and the mental sanity alongside the dad to raise a kid in a healthy household, and how like that's not good for anybody, and it just makes one more worse off citizen living in the country.
So I think when it comes to abortion, one of the stigmas that I have is that people try to make it a good thing. I don't think that um, abortion should be seen as something that is good. I think it also it's something that has a lot of negatives as well as like it does have it, and I do think that it does have its place as a society, and I do think it is necessary for us to have. But I don't like the way it's almost seen as like it's not something that should be considered. Oh, um, just a second thought,
Uh huh.
essentially. Say, where
But
it's
that's
like,
not and I totally agree with that. But that's not. We're not. You're not answering George's question. Is it
no,
justified?
no, and that's the issue. I think there are like anything in our society. I think it should be something that's great. I think if a, it, just because if a woman wants to have an abortion, I think
It is
that
their
she
body.
just like she's justified
Uh huh.
in having that abortion, but I don't think it's a moral. I would never argue that it's a moral justification. I would argue that it's something that our society needs to have, and I think it's part of. It's just generally
Mm.
part of society that
Okay.
in any society you're gonna have things that aren't considered moral.
Moral. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess for the sake
That's
of
fair.
I guess for the sake of consistency, would you two have an abortion if you had like a child that you're not ready to have?
I can answer that question. Like, look, if I, I will never have a child if I won't be ready to have a child.
Exactly. So then why can't okay, that's where I come
But
in.
some people don't have that. My privilege, like, I have privilege just from where I go to school and the networks that I've built and the that work ethic that I know that I have, and I have my mom, right?
Well in that case don't have a kid. That would be my answer. You know what I mean? But you know what I mean? So we can put the rape cases aside because they're
Uh
astronomical.
huh.
They're very low.
Uh huh.
If you want to go into like because I know that every time a pro-life argument comes in, usually like the scenario that's thrown in is like rape, but if you look at the numbers, first of all, rapes have been going down year after year since 2016. Like they're like yeah, they have. If you look at the FBI database of criminal records from 14,000 different precincts and police stations, it's gone down something like 30%. So people saying that oh man, people are getting left and right, so that's why what's it called? Oh my god, what was I gonna say? Oh, that's why abortions are justified. It turns out that out of like at least like from Planned, if you go to Planned Parenthood, I think they did something like 50,000 abortions last year. I think from rape it was something like 5% of them were from rape, something really low, some really low number. So again, that all goes back to personal responsibility, right? Again, the kid's gonna have a super shitty life, but it takes two to tango, right? The woman says, "I want to have an abortion," right? Well, the fuck are you doing having unprotected sex, right? Or let's say they didn't have unprotected sex, but they did have the baby, but a baby still happened just because it happens. Contraceptives aren't perfect, even though they're very good. Um, they're very good. They're not perfect. Like to me, it's not so much that it's the woman's choice. It's like, well, the woman says, "Well, I'm not ready for this baby. What if the dad wants to take care of it?"
Hmm.
Well, if you tell me that you're socioeconomically, you are not ready, well, the government will take care of you if you're a single parent. That's a law. Like they will take care of you. So it might be a shitty life, but saying
Hmm.
saying that you can't provide for it is like there are social safety nets for it, or you can leave them off for adoption. Like I don't know. It's like to me, like this is just like from a moral high ground, right? To me,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like just kind of like with the death penalty. It's just if a murderer, this is where I stand on the death penalty, and I think it relates, right? If you commit a crime that justifies you killing someone else, well, because I'm a religious person. I don't want to say very religious, but I am definitely religious. But because I'm religious, I don't think, regardless of what they have done, obviously they have sinned and they should rot in a cell for the rest of their life, probably in solitary, so they can go crazy. But I still don't think that us as humans should have I don't right's not the right word, but I don't think we as humans should be like killing other people, other beings, right? And to me, a baby is no different. Like a baby should not suffer for the mistake of two idiots, I guess.
That's yeah, that's fair. Um,
Mm, I, I think I, so. My issue is like we do live in a society where you are justified in you're oftentimes you are justified for other human beings, and a lot of the times it isn't. Um, Examples are like self-defense or because of prime examples are like self-defense and um, if people are murder charged or the fact that we as a society we're okay with killing people in other countries, and that's where I fundamentally disagree. I don't think it's an issue of oh you're trying to kill somebody. It's and I feel like that's something that you need to take into account that we do live in a society where it is sometimes justifiable.
uh-huh. And I think like as for women, like being able to make their own decisions about their health, their body, and their sexual life is their basic human right. That's where I'm coming from.
So, the reason that I at least the whole my body argument is, in my opinion, BS because, again, that baby didn't just happen. It's her body, yes, but that baby didn't happen without like a male, having sex with her, right? So it's not her decision alone to make, right?
Fair. Yeah,
I strongly disagree with that, just because it's not her decision alone to make. Like, again, if she had sex all of a sudden, right, and then the dude just completely doesn't care about it, like I was like, oh, like he just like he's playing dumb, he's like, oh, I've never met that woman or whatever, then that sucks, because now you're just kind of now she has to make a really tough choice. Like, I feel like, again, I'm not completely like I'm not heartless, right? Again, I'm not heartless. Like, I feel for her, and that probably sucks, and it's probably like again, I don't think I would do it, and that's why I'm pro-life. But when they like if she had to make a decision like that and she's not ready for it, it's like I personally think that she still needs to look for alternatives in order to keep that baby alive, because, again, as humans, I just I don't think we have any moral ground to murder another human being.
but yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I acknowledge that. Yeah, that's your perspective, and that's totally valid.
Like, how does that make sense when it comes to the fact that that I don't know. I just don't see it as like there's a difference between a female, like a woman being pregnant is completely different for a female than it is for a man.
Yeah,
Like that argument that a man should have like a say in whether there should be an abortion or not, I can't agree with that. He's not the person that's carrying around that child for 8 months, 8 to 9 months.
Again, this all goes back to responsibility, right? Like, if you know you're gonna engage in a sexual act, there comes repercussions with that, regardless of how safe you are. That is why I still believe that the whole it's my body. I think I don't agree with it, just because whenever you're going to have sex with someone, regardless of whether it's intimate or not, there's always that risk, right? And if let's say that the guy, he is of the belief of like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have sex with 20 women, right? And one of them happens to be gets pregnant, but he does decide to take responsibility of it. Why doesn't he get a say? Like, now that's my next question. Like, why not? Like, because again, it's growing in her body, right? But he's the father, so he's just as responsible for that baby as she is.
Okay, so that's just not true because ultimately it is the female's body. It's her life that is often in danger.
Oh, that's a completely different topic. Because when the Alabama thing happened, like when they made abortions illegal in Alabama, it was specifically stated that unless the mother is in immediate danger, like if the baby is gonna like kill her or is gonna harm her in any way, then the abortion is justified. Which I actually can make a case for that, right? But saying that that abortions, because they're all in danger, that's not true. Like, again, this is the scenario where the male wants the baby. Like, he doesn't want it to die. He wants to take responsibility, whether it's a mistake or not, right? Like, I don't think that the woman has a 100% absolute say, right?
fair. That's a very fair argument. That's a use case where the man and the woman would have to have a conversation, and they would have to like talk about it. Right? It's nothing against like. There's no need to bring in morals because it's there. It's their moral foundations that are being tested, not yours from an outsider's perspective in looking inside.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, no, that was a cool discussion.
Yeah.
That was a cool.
I can't. Like, I think the problematic aspect is like he's not the one. Like, as far as him having a say in whether she should have, I see a lot of danger in that too, because there could be cases where, like, somebody was raped, and
Yeah, that's different though. Yeah.
let's say he wants to keep the child. You can make the argument, well, that's just the consequences of his action. That's not. And it's one of those things where I'd rather. I think it's fundamentally better to just have abortion legal, and have it so that it's accessible to anybody. And even in the cases where statistically you are going to have people that abuse it, if it helps just one person, it's better, because I'd rather have, like, it all comes down to, like, if you have a child, and if we're talking about single mothers and how, like, single motherhood doesn't necessarily and having that opinion that single motherhood doesn't necessarily, like, statistically speaking, isn't going to do right by the child. It's one of those things that you have to build a foundation where if somebody does want to be a single mother, that they have, that it's not the support that they're going to getting is they're gonna get a structured support, like with that mentorship for their kids. And if the idea is you want to have a child to grow up in a loving household, right? And if you're going to have situations where that mother cannot provide that loving household, I see it's just better that the child not be born at all at risk of putting society in danger.
Aaron, I'm gonna psychoanalyze you for like 2 seconds. It's interesting that you said, even if it helps one person, right?
Yes.
If you take that same intent and shift it over to our first topic of changing Latinx to have more comfortability for at least one person, it's super interesting, right? Because it's two different topics, it's two different issues,
So,
but you're different lenses.
People, sometimes you need a firm hand to help somebody, and sometimes that firm hand is this is an issue that you have to deal with, and it's not an issue that's dealt with through society, versus this is an issue where it can't, like, this is an issue where it shouldn't be dealt with through society. Our society shouldn't dictate whether a woman should have an abortion.
Man,
right?
that's where I fundamentally disagree.
I think we should move on.
No.
We've already established that we disagree with each other.
It's just like my final point is, I'm just gonna make I'm gonna make a final point. It's just I really don't want, like, humans have shown time and time again how they do abuse the system, right? Like, especially with social safety nets.
Of course, yes.
8 out of 10 like poor people will stay on the social safety net just because it's convenient, right? So let's assume that we make.
I don't know about that.
It is okay. I will have to pull that statistic up again. But anyhow, because again, I'm gonna state this before we move on. All of my most of my opinions are based on fact, just for the record. Like, a lot of the stuff that I say is based on stuff that I've read or stuff that I have empirical data on, right? So let's say that we do make abortion legal, like everywhere. Like every doctor has to be able to perform an abortion if he's, like, I guess, if he has the right medical licenses to do it. Well, I feel like that's just gonna exacerbate the problem, right? Like then you're gonna have an incentive to have unprotected sex, because there's no repercussion, and then a bunch of babies are just gonna get killed, right? Like we've already established that a baby is being killed, right? and your logic and your logic is that it's better for him to be dead instead of having a chance at life, right? Because you're assuming that he's gonna have a shitty life regardless, right? I disagree with that, and that's gonna be my final point on that.
You're not assuming that he's gonna have a shitty life. He's going to have a shitty life because his parents can't take care of him, or he won't have enough resources to continue life.
That's still an assumption. You don't know that. You don't 100% know that every single kid is gonna turn up like that. I understand.
Fair,
I understand the concern. But I still don't think it justifies killing a baby. But okay, the next topic I have here is, we already talked about the Minnesota killing.
I think we covered like a broad spectrum. I think we should save some.
I agree. I had a really good discussion. Like I had a lot of fun discussing these things.
Yeah, man.
Probably should be going to sleep soon.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we can pick it up tomorrow. Well, not tomorrow, but whenever we do it again, the next topics I have on I guess here is like religion and like and also the government. That was one topic I did really wanted to cover, but
politics. We didn't talk about politics.
Yeah, we didn't talk about politics at all. We talked about Latinx. That took way longer than I thought. It was supposed to be like a fun like icebreaker, but we ended up taking like 45 to 50 minutes of it. Like pretty much half of our thing was on Latinx. We talked about abortion, which was definitely the one that I wanted, the for sure thing that I wanted to get to. And we talked about the Minnesota crisis, also about single motherhood rates. We didn't come up with a solution for single motherhood. Well, did we? No, we didn't, right? We didn't really come up with a concrete way to, I guess, lower the single mother. I mean, I thought that we just needed like a culture change and like bring in responsibility back to the household. Also get rid of laws that incentivize single parent households. That'd be my thing.
And so for the topics of the next talk, it would be like masculinity. I really want to talk about that.
Yeah, so for the next ones,
like healthy masculinity versus toxic masculinity.
So I think talking about religion and government would be the next one, and then we also have the racist undertones, like the roots of like we can probably get into like Christopher Columbus.
Yeah, even the founding of America.
Yeah, and toxic masculinity. All right. Well, I hope you guys like that. It says here there's 2 people watching. I don't know if one of those is you guys, but if you guys were watching,
no.
Okay, good. So then we have 2, hopefully. So the next stream is gonna be on the official channel, which I will give. Actually, before we leave, I'll put the official channel on chat because I did make an official channel, and I will be re-uploading this podcast to. I will to the new channel.
On YouTube?
Yeah. So basically.
Oh, I do wanna put forward that like if you're gonna post this, to ask people who watch it to like comment on us, like comment on like their points of views or comment on things we can improve on if we go on a tangent.
Well, go ahead.
Like maybe, yeah.
Well, go ahead. We're live, so you can do that.
Whether it's live or whether people will watch it later, I don't know. We definitely want to have this discussion be inclusive. We have fun with it, kind of like seeing how we think, but also how others think. Like George said at the beginning, we want to see how others think and question us, question what we think.
Yeah,
call us on our bullshit.
Yeah, if you want to be part of the discussion, just go ahead and let us know, and we'd be glad to have you. Again, it's Latino Thoughts, but there's no one that we won't take.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to finish it off by saying, I think if you don't agree with me, you're wrong.
Lol.
I really appreciate the chance to articulate my thoughts, and I'm looking forward to having this discussion.
Yeah.
So do I.
All right.
Ditto.
All right. So I finally we agree for once. I think everyone that disagrees with me is a fucking idiot.
Shut up.
Just facts. Just facts. Everyone else is wrong.